Krishna Krishna Hare 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 Rama Hare Rama 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 Hare Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Ram Rama Rama Hare 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 Krishna 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 Hare 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 Ram Rama Rama Hare Hare. Just before we carry on, Rasikananda Prabhu, are you there? Rasika? I don't know if he's there.
The curtains again.
He's drawn the curtains. He's gone back to bed.
Yes, Maharaj.
Okay, Rasika. Can we put on a little bhajan? Because we're moving to a new book today, and it's the Teachings of Lord Caitanya. So can we put on a nice bhajan like Sri Krishna Chaitanya, Daya Koramore? You know that one?
Yes,
Sri
Maharaj.
Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu. If you can find it. And when I say, not now, in a few minutes, we can put it on the screen, if that's okay. Is that okay?
Okay. Yes,
Give it
Maharaj.
a go anyway. Hare Krishna. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna. Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare. Hare Rama, Hare Rama. Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna. Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare. Hare Rama, Hare Rama. Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna. Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare. Hare Rama, Hare Rama. Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna. Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare. Hare Rama, Hare Rama. Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna. Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare. Hare Rama, Hare Rama. Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna. Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare. Hare Rama, Hare Rama. Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare. Hare Rama, Hare Rama. Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare. Hare Rama, Hare Rama. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare. Hare Rama, Hare Rama. Rama Rama, Hare Hare.
Hare Krishna,
Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare. Hare Rama, Hare Rama. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare. Hare Rama, Hare Rama. Rama Rama, Hare Hare.
Hare Krishna,
Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare. Hare Rama, Hare Rama. Ram Ram, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare. Hare Rama, Hare Rama. Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare. Hare Rama, Hare Rama. Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Krishna Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare. Hare Rama, Hare Rama. Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare. Hare Rama, Hare Rama. Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Krishna Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare. Hare Rama, Hare Rama. Rama Rama, Hare Hare.
Krishna,
Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare. Hare Rama, Hare Rama. Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare. Hare Rama, Hare Rama. Rama Rama, Hare Hare.
Hare Krishna,
Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare. Hare Rama, Hare Rama. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare.
Hare Krishna,
Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare.
Hare Krishna, Krishna
Krishna,
Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare
Go Premanandi. So I don't know if we're ready. Rasikananda, have you got that song? Yeah, here it comes. So because today we're starting on the Teachings of Lord Caitanya Mahaprabhu, so we'll sing a little bhajan to begin with. Very well known. Many of you are familiar with this song of Narottam Das Thakur. Sri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Dayakura More. Hare Krishna. Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Daya Karo More. Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Daya Karo Toma Vina Ke Dayalu Jagata Samsare Toma Vina Toma Vina Ke Dayalu Jagata samsare Avina ke doyalu Jagata samsare Patita pavana hetu Tava avatara Patita pavana hetu Tava avatara Musamapatita Prabhu Napai Peyara Musamapatita Prabhu Napai Peyara Aha Prabhu Nityananda Premananda Sukhi Aha Prabhu Nityananda Premananda Sukhi Vipavala Kanakara Ami Bharadukhi Vipamala Kanakara Ami Bharadukhi Doya Koro Sitapati Advaita Gosai Doya Koro Sitapati Advaita Gosai Tava Kripa Vole Pai Chaitanya Nitai Tava Kripa Vole Pai Chaitanya Nitai. That verse comes from. Never seen that before. That's a new verse we've got there. I've never seen it before. Gora Prema Ayatanu Pandita Gadadha Gora Prema Ayatanu
Pandita Gadadara
Srinivasa Haridasa Tuyarasagana
Srinivasa Haridasa
Haha Swarup Sanatana Rupa Gunatha Haha Swarup Bhatta Juga Sri Jivaha Prabhu Lokanatha Jivaha Prabhu Lokanatha Doya Koro Shri Acharya Prabhu Srinivasa Koro Shri Acharya Prabhu Srinivasa Ramachandra Sangamage Narottama Dasa Ramachandra Sangamage Narottama Dasa Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Daya Koro More Shri Krishna
Chaitanya Prabhu Daya Koro More
Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Daya Koro More Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Daya Koro More Tomavina Ke Doyalu Jagata Samsare Tomavina Ke Doyalu Jagata Samsare Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama Hare Rama 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 Hare 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 Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama Hare Rama 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 Hare 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 Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare 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 Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare 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 Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare 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 Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama Rama Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare 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 Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Krishna, Krishna Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Jai Om Vishnu Pada Paramahamsa Pariraj Kacharya Ashtota Satishresi Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada Ki Ananta Kota Vaishnavinda Ki Namacharya Shri Haridas Thakur Ki Prem Se Gaho Sri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Shri Vasadi Gaur Bhaktivinda Ki Shri Radha Krishna Gopa Gopinath Shamakunda Radhakunda Giri Govardhan Ki Shri Vrindavan Dham Ki Shri Mayapur Dham Ki Jagannath Puri Dham Ki Ganga Maya Ki Jamuna Maya Ki Tulasi Deva Ki Bhakti Deva Ki Samaveta Bhaktivinoda Ki Lord Chaitanya's Harinam Sankirtan Brihat Madanga Ki Srila Prabhupada Ki Sri Sri Gaurnitai Ki Gaur Premanandi Yukadharma Harinama Sankirtan. All glories to the Assembly. All glories to Shri Guru and Grand all glories to Srila Prabhupada. Namo Vishnu Padaya Krishna Prasthaya Srimate Bhaktivedanta Swami Tinami. Namaste Saraswati Devi. Gauravani Vicharine Nevasesha Sunyavadi Pastichadi Shita. Hare Krishna. Welcome this evening from devotees from Scotland, England, France, Germany, India, Australia, New Zealand, wherever else you may be today in Malaysia, wherever it is. We welcome you all to this evening's resuming our classes. Maybe we'll be a little bit more regular. Let's hope so. The last month has been very busy here at New Mayapur with festivals and many devotees coming and going and so on. And been very ecstatic. We've been fortunate here in France. The lockdown was very much loosened. Even with legal permission, we've been having, following the local authorities' directives or suggestions, big festivals here at the New Mayapur. Anyway, big festivals here last month, and very many wonderful programs and devotees. And we hope that you all had a very wonderful Janmashtami, deep in our hearts, deepening our attachment to Radha and Krishna, Srila Prabhupada, Lord Balaram. By the strength of Lord Balaram only can we maintain or proceed on our spiritual paths towards love for Radha and Krishna. And by the mercy of Srila Prabhupada, the manifest representative of Lord Balaram, pure devotees are representatives of Lord Balaram. So next week we have Radhastami, the holy appearance day of Srimati Radharani. It's a wonderful event. I believe it's Wednesday next week. I can't guarantee. I don't know what the program is here exactly, but we may well be having a program next Wednesday. You'll have to see what the schedule here is, but we'll keep you informed on. Otherwise, on Saturday, we plan to have another Zoom class, if all goes well, Krishna allows. And we like to offer our obeisances to all the devotees and Vanchakalpatubhyascha, Preface Sindhivyevacha, Padinam Pavanevyo, Vaishnavevyo, Namo Namaha, Jai Srila Prabhupada. So this evening we're going to kind of begin a little session, Teachings of Lord Caitanya Mahaprabhu. It's a very beautiful book. I suppose you can see it. This is an old edition of Teachings of Lord Caitanya. This edition was from the 80s. The original edition was printed, and then, the original edition was printed. Perhaps it was the first of all the big books that Prabhupada printed. As far as we can see, it was printed in 1968, the original edition. And when Prabhupada was in New York, the first big book published. It was a yellow color book at those days. And Prabhupada very much wanted that. The big thing that's lacking, many people in the world have heard about Krishna. And they have some kind of devotion or relationship with Krishna, especially in India, of course. But Krishna's quite, to some degree, people have some understanding, some kind of personality, God, whatever. And many people have heard of Rama. But very few people have heard of Lord Caitanya, even in India. And especially in this age of Kali, to approach Radha and Krishna is not easy, it's not cheap thing. And the Lord has come, Radha and Krishna have come in the divine form of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, specifically for that reason, to give us that access, you could say, to their love, or let's say to exchange loving relationship with them. They appeared in the form of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu for this reason, to give us this chance. And in this age of Kali, which we're in, to actually attain that platform of service, is the process we must go through. Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. He's come for that reason. Otherwise, other forms of God consciousness may be there, worshiping Krishna, but he's come to give us this highest form of loving exchange. And of course, any other form of loving exchange can also be available through the mercy of Lord Caitanya. But especially in this age, Lord Caitanya, not only has he come himself, but he's also introduced the Yuga Dharma, the chanting of the Maha Mantra, for the whole world to take advantage of this opportunity. So it's very special, and along with Lord Janananda, of course, who is Lord Balaram, in his most merciful form, Lord Balaram, to relieve us of all of our material attachments, anarthas, our offences, etc., which are pretty much expected in this age of Kali. Practically everybody in this age is overwhelmed by the modes of nature. So Lord Nityananda particularly is extremely merciful. And he's come to shower his mercy on all of us through the Sankirtan movement. Their appearance is very, very special. Lord Caitanya and Lord Nityananda. Amongst all the forms of Godhead, they are the most merciful because they're freely giving love of God. Whereas when Krishna comes, in fact, practically speaking, at all times, there's a demand or there's a condition, surrender, then I will deliver you, etc. But Lord Caitanya, Lord Nityananda, they're just asking us to please take, but not just take it. Because of course, you could say that's surrender. They're giving it freely. This is by their grace. Krishna consciousness or Krishna praying has been made readily available to everyone. That's their intention. We drown all living entities in the Sankirtan movement. So Prabhupada particularly, this is very unfamiliar to the world, Lord Caitanya Mahaprabhu, which Prabhupada particularly emphasized, at least in the beginning. We see that he was lecturing regularly on the Chaitanya Charitamrita, even though it wasn't published. And he published the Teachings of Lord Caitanya before any other big book, even before Bhagavad Gita. Teachings of Lord Caitanya appears it was published. Anyway, like that.
So we're going to start with the first big book published. We'll start with Teachings of Lord Caitanya today. So, well, we begin at the preface. Preface or preface is like sort of, let's say, to help us to understand the text. What is the purpose? What is the motive behind it all? What is the nature of the text? So preface is quite important. We may just skip the preface sometimes. Oftentimes we find in the preface of a book very important information to help us to understand the text in the right light, to give us the light by which we can enter into the actual subject matter of the book. Teachings of Lord Caitanya primarily deals with 5 conversations of Lord Caitanya and his associates, and with persons who were, of course, they eventually became associates, but may not have been. They may have been opposed almost to the philosophy explained by Lord Caitanya. But the 5 conversations start with a conversation with Rupa Goswami, who was, of course, intimate associate of the Lord, and the second conversation is with Sanatana Goswami. They're both the primary 6 Goswamis, they're the primary 2. And then we have a conversation with Sarvabhauma Bhattacharya, who was a logician and was actually challenging, in a sense, the pure teaching of Lord Caitanya, which is a philosophy which incubated the simultaneous one and difference, and even the personal nature of Godhead was questionable. And the next conversation with Prakashananda Saraswati, who very much was opposed to the teaching of the school of the Vaishnavas, the Dvaita school, because he was a Dvaitist, he was an impersonalist, Mayavadi impersonalist, who didn't accept the eternal form of the personal Godhead, even the living entity having an eternal relationship with Godhead as such, and just accepting the impersonal Brahmajyoti. So Lord Caitanya, in that conversation, Prakashananda Saraswati received the mercy of Lord Caitanya, realized the personal nature of Godhead. And the 5th conversation, which is a very elevated one, is with Lord Caitanya and Ramananda Roy. All these conversations in the Chaitanya Charitamrita, and they're summarized in a written form in Teachings of Lord Caitanya. That's the primary contents. With Ramananda Roy, of course, the topics go up to the highest point of Mahabhav, or the intense loving experiences or relationship between Radha and Krishna themselves. And that's something which is extremely deep and is only summarized, practically speaking. But it's a very wonderful section. But today we're just going to deal with the preface, which is that which goes before. You can't immediately see the face of the Lord. This is preface, so that we can actually become more eligible to see the face of Krishna. So in the preface, some of you may have the book open, or you may find it on your whatever your electronic gadgets. And Prabhupada starts off the preface describing how there's really no difference between the teachings of Lord Caitanya and the teachings of Krishna. They may appear different in terms of the details, even the language may. Bhagavad Gita is in Sanskrit. Lord Caitanya teachings, Lord Caitanya is not, mostly it's in Bengali, of course. And Lord Caitanya was preaching in that part of India primarily, and his teachings were recorded largely in Bengali. Sanskrit is also there. But the message is the same. And that message is loving devotion to Krishna. As we hear quite often, when Krishna appeared, he requested that we surrender unto him. That was the essential teaching of Bhagavad Gita, surrender. Everything in the Bhagavad Gita is leading up to this surrender. But in Kali Yuga, we very hard to surrender. Even not what it means to surrender. People have so many different, whatever, speculations or whatever it may be on how to surrender to Krishna. So, as we mentioned, Krishna has appeared, Radha and Krishna have appeared as Lord Caitanya to teach us the process of surrendering. This Sankirtan movement, this Prem Sankirtan movement. Lord Rupa Goswami, he also addressed Lord Chaitanya, Namo Mahabharanya, Krishna Prema Pradayati, Krishna Krishna Chaitanya Namne Gautri Nama. You are the most magnanimous of all forms of Godhead, because you're freely giving what no other expansion form, whatever, has given before. You're freely giving the highest form of love of Godhead. And this is also another exceptional feature. It's not just he's giving freely, but he's giving the highest form of love of Godhead. And it's to everyone. And in Teachings of Lord Caitanya, we could say all these personalities have got in the discussions are very scholarly or very elevated personalities. But he gave it to everyone, especially Lord Nityananda gave love of God even to the lowest of all living entities, even to the animals, what to speak of human beings. So when the Lord also describes in the Bhagavad Gita, we have that verses there, how the Lord takes charge of his pure devotees, and he personally provides what they lack and preserves what they have. He takes personal direction. He guides the wandings. Tesham satata yuktanam bhajatam prachipurvakam Vyantite, to those who are constantly devoted and worship me with love, I give the understanding by which they can come to me. And Krishna is guiding every living entity, but he takes personal interest in his devotees. Those who are turning to him, those who are accepting him, even those who are accepting his form in the form of scriptural injunctions, etc., are on the path of surrender by following various scriptural injunctions relevant to our situation. This is also surrendering, because the Vedas come from Krishna. We may like, may not like. But this is how we surrender, by applying Krishna's directions in our lives. It doesn't mean that we've already woken our love of Godhead, but this is the path of giving up our false ego, and giving up our independent tendencies of the way I like it. Krishna consciousness ultimately is the way we like it, but not the way our conditioned self likes it. But as long as we follow our conditioned self or our conditioned nature, we're subjected to remain in this material world of birth and death. So scriptures are there, pure devotees are giving directions there to help us to become free of this conditional perspective of life, perception. We have a conditional perception. Whatever mode it's in, it's still conditional. So Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu's process is very wonderful, that just by chanting holy names in the right way, any way is okay, but really it's got to be in the correct way in order that the real effect takes place. Like a medicine is administered, given by the physician or the doctor, and it goes along with a prescription. And in the beginning of Bhagavad Gita, we see Prabhupada said that we should understand the Bhagavad Gita in the same way that Arjuna understood it, following his path. So similar to teachings of Lord Caitanya Mahaprabhu, or the path of the Sankirtan movement, anything is good. But if we really want the full effect of the mercy of Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, then we have to apply the teachings according to the devotee's directions. Anyone can chant, no doubt. There's no hard and fast rules in chanting, and everyone benefits. One can get freed of sinful reactions and different aparubdha reactions from past lifetimes, etc. But to actually awaken or to develop one's attraction, genuine attraction, pure attraction towards Krishna. Then there's a process to follow. So in his teachings of Lord Caitanya, we find sometimes this is coming up. Rupa Goswami gives us the process, which is further expanded in Nectar Devotion. Sanatana Goswami, the teachings are extended in the Chaitanya Charitamrita, extensively there in the Chaitanya Charitamrita. And of course, Sanatana Goswami also expanded them in various writings like Bhagavatamrita, Haribhakti Vilas, and so on. And Rupa Goswami, in many of his writings, expanded the teachings he received from Lord Caitanya. So taking charge of a devotee is that the Lord gives intelligence to the devotee. He gives intelligence to the devotee so that the devotee acts in a way which is favorable for their Krishna consciousness. That's good fortune, if he can be directed in that way, either internally or externally. The Lord appears in the heart of Chaitya Guru and externally a Siksha Guru. And of course, Diksha Guru to establish us on the path. It's one connection. But primarily the Siksha comes within and without and through scriptures. So through the Guru, Siksha Guru, directions, and through scriptures and within the heart, the Lord may be directing his pure devotees to act in a way which is actually pleasing to him. This is what a devotee wants. It's not just something pleasing to me, but a pure devotee is one who thinks only of the pleasure of the Lord. A pure devotee, Prabhupada writes here, a pure devotee is a soul who is forever surrendered to the Lord. Just as a child is surrendered to his parents, animal to his master. In the surrendering process, one should, accept things. These are the 6 items of surrender. And we hear these in many places, but it's good to remember what they are. 1, accept things favorable for discharging devotional service. It's called anukul. Reject things unfavorable, pratikul. Rejecting things which are unfavorable for pleasing Krishna. We sometimes, in the case of chanting Hare Krishna, we call it aparadha, against Radharani. That which is displeasing, because Radharani is the emblem of pleasing Krishna, personification, personal personification of bringing pleasure to Krishna. So anything which doesn't bring pleasure to Krishna is aparadha. 3, to believe firmly in the Lord's protection. These are only protector. We don't just sit down and do nothing. We do make an effort, but we understand that ultimately Krishna is the only one who can actually protect us. No amount of material endeavor or material, medically speaking, can guarantee our protection, even during our lifetime. No amount of family support or national defense or anything can protect us. Even knowledge, so much knowledge we may have, but it cannot protect us ultimately from whatever danger or sickness or death or whatever it is that we have to face in due course of time. And the 4th one, to feel exclusively dependent on the mercy of the Lord. We may think that others are providing. People get very proud of it sometimes, but ultimately everything is coming from Krishna. Everything is the mercy of Krishna, which manifests through the pure devotees, no doubt, in the sense that they're not alternate sources of mercy. They are just, you could say, transparent medias through which the mercy comes to us. So we also understand that they are, without their mercy, we can't receive the mercy of Krishna, but ultimately it's the mercy of Krishna. Both in our advancement of spiritual life, even in our material life, is Krishna's mercy. Whatever we have in this lifetime is a form of Krishna's mercy. Be it, we may see it as being favorable or unfavorable, but it's a form of Krishna's mercy. So Krishna's devotee sees everything in the light of Krishna's mercy, and not in the light of their own interference in the arrangement of the Lord, or that some other living entity is a competitor or powerful or anything like that. Whatever power or strength anyone has is coming from Krishna. They have no interest separate from the interest of the Lord. This sometimes Prabhupada would describe as being one with God. That we, in the case of the impersonalists, of course, being one with God is there in every respect. They don't see anyone to have a separate interest from. There's only the one homogeneous spiritual existence. But for a devotee, they see that everything is indeed spirit, that is accepted by one and all. Everything is spiritual in its intrinsic nature. But at the same time, the devotees, the Vaishnava school at least, sees that there is variety in the oneness of the spiritual realm, Chincha Veda Veda Tattva. So they very much, oneness for a devotee is to be harmonious with the will of the Lord, not to be independent, not to have any separate interest. In other words, there's no duplicity in their motive. And there's certainly no interest save and except that of pleasing the Lord. So they have no other interest. It's just the oneness with the God. Is sometimes we say, the Father and the Son are one in interest, or the same intent, or maybe husband or wife, boy and girl, whatever it is, they're like one in their interest. Any persons, they have one interest. But they're two people, but they have one interest. So this is the oneness of the devotee. And the sixth one, always feeling oneself meek and humble. It doesn't mean that one is helpless, useless, which we may be, but it doesn't mean we kind of live our lives exactly like that. Again, it means always feeling dependent upon Krishna, seeing oneself as being incapable or completely depending upon Krishna. And one is also seeing all other living entities as Krishna's parts and parcels, not seeing them as separate. Pure devotee doesn't see them separate. Even if we aren't on that platform, we act in a way for the welfare of all other living entities. A devotee sees himself as a servant of the servant. Develops this mood of service to others, based upon the fact that ultimately we are, of course, all servants of Krishna. And every living entity is part and parcel of Krishna by serving other living entities in the knowledge of their relationship with Krishna and trying to awaken their relationship with Krishna. When this is a mood of humility, always wanting to help others to progress on the spiritual path. So we'll jump on a little bit in the preface rather. I can't say exactly how many lines down, but if you go down to Prabhupada's preface there, you'll see how he talks about engaging our mind, quoting from Bhagavad Gita. This most important verse of the Bhagavad Gita: engage your mind always in thinking. Offering obeisances, completely absorbed in me, you will come to me. So this is surrender. This is the principle of Bhagavad Gita, and we'll see this in Teachings of Lord Caitanya, living example. Through knowledge, conviction, why we should surrender, not just blindly, but why, explained in Bhagavad Gita. The reason why we should surrender. And this is the result of being convinced. Krishna now says to Arjuna, engage your mind, think in me always. You'll come to me, whatever we're thinking of at the time of death that we attain. So it's a process in life of living a life which is anukulyena, which is favorable to becoming dependent upon Krishna, receiving Krishna's mercy, having no desire except for pleasing the Lord, and constantly becoming very humble, understanding our very, tiny nature in one sense. We're very small. In reality, we're very small. We tend to think ourselves very big in many cases. Prabhupada goes on, if one desires to understand the sun as it is an example, to give us an example of understanding the Supreme. If one tries to understand or desires to understand the sun as it is, one must first face the sun, then the sun globe, and after entering into the globe, come face to face with the predominating deity. People may not believe in the predominating deity of the sun, it's understandable, but they can accept the sun rays and the sun itself at least. At least those two stages are not difficult to understand. We may not be able to face the sun. We can see the sunshine, but we may not be able to exactly enter the sun globe, that's for sure. Not in our present form. Similarly, we can't really enter the spiritual world in a mundane sense of the term. It's not possible. One has to become pure. To enter into the pure, to enter into fire, we have to become fire. To enter into the pure spiritual realm, we have to be completely purified. Vishaya Chaya. Vishaya Chaya Kabe Shuddha Habima. Kabe Hama He Rabo Shri Vrindavana. We want to enter into the spiritual world. Vishaya Charya, we have to be completely purified of all material motivation if we want to enter into Vrindavan. And we can try our best. Ultimately, it does depend upon Krishna. It doesn't depend on our endeavor, but upon Krishna's mercy. But we have to at least do our part and try to mold our lives in a way which is favorable, pleasing to Krishna. My internet is unstable. It's not the only thing that's unstable around here. Many things are unstable in our lives these days. Our minds are unstable. The world situation may be unstable. Our health might be unstable. So many things may be unstable. That's the nature of the material world, you could say. So we have to take shelter of that which is stable. The Supreme Personality of Godhead, Chitta, he's an infallible personality of Godhead. So Lord Caitanya is teaching us this process, how to directly worship Krishna. We've just had Krishna Janananda, a wonderful birth of Lord Krishna in this world, which is in of itself is very mysterious. In of itself, it's a very fascinating story and inconceivable to ordinary mundane experience, of course. The Lord is not born by normal means. He appears in the heart when the heart is Vasudeva, which means heart is completely purified. Then Vasudeva, the Supreme Lord, appears in a purified heart. So Prabhupada suggests that the place known as Vrindavan is as good as Krishna. That's amazing. Yeah, well, Krishna's Dham is a residence, is his place where he expands his pastimes, where he displays his pastimes. On one sense, although there's variety, there's no difference either. They're both of the same transcendental nature. So if we actually enter into Vrindavan, which we've just heard, by becoming purified of all separate desires, independent desires, etc., then we can realize this, and hopefully we can realize this, that Krishna, his name, his paraphernalia, everything, is actually on the same transcendental nature. You know, although it has its place and its, you could say, its own unique aspects, its own qualities, its own opulences, etc., it's the same spiritual quality. And to hear about the qualities of Krishna, to see his form, to hear his name, and his pastimes is all the same transcendental purifying effect. Therein is experienced. We don't separate necessarily, although there is, you could say, separation between Krishna and his Tridiya. But Krishna is never separated from his Tridiya or his paraphernalia, his associates, etc. They're all on the same level. Mother Yasoda, we were reading that just a few days ago. I don't know if it's in the Bhagavatam or what. But actually, Mother Yasoda, Mother Devaki, they're on the same transcendental quality, same transcendental plane as Krishna. So hearing about them is also extremely pure. Extremely pure. Same with Vrindavan, to hear about the Holy Dham. There's no difference between the name, quality, form, pastimes, entourage, and paraphernalia of Krishna and Lord Krishna himself. This is the absolute nature of the absolute truth. Although they appear to be separately constituted, they're all the same transcendentally purifying quality. Lord Caitanya Mahaprabhu, besides describing or giving the access to direct worship to Krishna and his associates and his Dharma, etc., he's also recommended the highest form of worship, which was personally demonstrated by the damsels of Maharaj. When Krishna came, many of his eternal associates appeared with him. In fact, his entire Dharma appeared as well, maybe not manifested in the same way or not manifested when in certain circumstances, but it's all present with him when he appears in this world. Similarly, he's come into this world to perform these pastimes so that, it's like, you could say, it's almost like advertising to attract people to come in. And we see this in our modern society, that people, they put on various, whatever programs and so on to try to attract our attention to that particular place or particular activity or product or whatever it may be. So Krishna's associates appear in this world. And for that reason, especially for those who are aspiring to enter into those various modes of worship, so they can then enter into those modes of worship, get the association of the eternal residents of Vrindavan, the Vagatmikas, those who are eternally situated in that mode, and in that association of those Ragatmikas, those eternal personalities who are in that particular mode of worship, they can develop that same mode of worship, be it whatever level it's on. And the highest amongst them is described here as the damsels of Maharaj. The intensity of their devotion is incomparable. The pleasure which it brings to Krishna is there's nothing which compares to, incomparable also. In every respect, their mode of worship is the highest. Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu also very much recommended that we study Srimad Bhagavatam as a spotless narration of transcendental knowledge. Srimad Bhagavatam, everything about the Srimad Bhagavatam is, although it may appear to include all kinds of various interactions with the material world, and even persons who have seemingly materialistic mentality, ultimately everything is directed towards pure devotional service. Everything. They point out the highest goal in human life is to develop. What's the purpose of human life? And for most people, it will not go much beyond material objectives. But here he points out the highest goal, Krishna Pramartha Mahan. Lord Chaitanya said, Krishna Pramartha Mahan. The highest goal of human life is to develop unalloyed love for Krishna, the Supreme Personality of Godhead. That's the highest goal in human life. Lord Chaitanya's teachings are identical. We've been reading the teachings of Lord Kapila the last quite a few sessions recently. We've been going through the teachings of Lord Kapila. And Srila Prabhupada says that the teachings of Lord Chaitanya are actually, more or less you would say, the exact words he uses here. Somewhere on the page just flipped down a bit too quickly there. See if we can get back to it. Identical to those given to by Lord Kapila Deva. They're identical. Why? They're identical in the sense that the purpose is the same. They may be different in the you could say in the prescriptions in terms of detail, but ultimately the purpose is exactly the same. Whether we go through the process of Sankhya Yoga, Ashtanga Yoga, whatever yoga, Karma Yoga, the goal ultimately is the same. The purpose is the same. In one sense, they're all the same in that way, although the details are different. The authorized system of yoga, which recommends meditation on the transcendence, that's Sankhya. That's the teachings of Lord Kapila, recommended meditation on the transcendental form of the Lord. And Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu gave the direct process, how we do that by Nama Sankirtan, chanting the holy names of the Lord. And some other processes describe sitting postures, various things to control our senses, focus our attention on Krishna. When one's engaged in the devotional service, the process given by Lord Chaitanya, which is very, very pleasing process, Ananda Kevala Bhakti. This process given by Lord Chaitanya is the highest pleasure, and it's very simple, just chanting, engaging our senses in Krishna service. Prabhupada said that when we're fully engaged, this is indeed samadhi, as we mentioned just now, the philosophical aspect of Lord Chaitanya's teachings, the Achintya Veda Veda, the simultaneous one and difference. And this is achieved through the chanting of the holy name of Krishna. One can realize this nature of the absolute truth. Pure heart can become purified, and with a purified heart, then love of Godhead can actually start to Krishna praying for the Kavanai, Shravanadi Shruti Kari Udai. Love of Krishna is there in our hearts. We just have to awaken it and so uncover it. It's covered over by all kinds of various desires, karmas, and so on. There's no difference, Lord Chaitanya taught, between his name, his form. This is all transcendental. The name Krishna is Krishna, Krishna Chaitanya. Nama Chintamana is Krishna Chaitanya Vasavikama. Vinadvan Nama Nama. The name and the named are non-different. We just have to hear that name from the right source and serve the name according to the representative of the name. He gives a service to perform which will please the name, and the name will thus reciprocate with us, and not just some mechanical thing which we're trying to gain something out of, or which we're trying to manipulate, or whatever it may be. And we'll realize the name is actually Krishna himself. It's not the name of Krishna, which could also be said to be the name of Krishna, but it is actually Krishna himself. And this is when the Lord reveals himself to the devotee, step by step, and gradually becomes So as we surrender, Krishna rewards us accordingly. So he reveals himself accordingly. On the different stages in chanting the holy names are there and described in different places, in Madhura Kadambini or Kalyana Kalpa, through different stages are described on the path of chanting Krishna or associating with Krishna. And the more we associate with the name of the submissive, humble heart, meek heart, the more the Lord reveals himself to us. And we're totally, in this age of Kali, humility is sometimes described as accepting. There is no other path. I am not qualified to expect to attain the same mercy of the Lord, or to speak of attain perfection in any other process of devotional service, even though we may perform. I'm not qualified other than through the chanting in the holy name. I'm not qualified there either, but this is my only hope, to take full shelter of the holy name of Krishna, to surrender to the holy name of Krishna. This is my only hope. I can't expect. I'm just not qualified to study the scriptures and expect to be able to understand. We do study, and that's an important part of our devotion, our service to the name. But that alone is not the path. Some people, anything's possible by Krishna's grace. But this humility that we have no other means other than through the taking shelter of the holy name, chanting Krishna's names. Keep chanting, depending upon the mercy of Krishna, expecting his protection always. And that doesn't mean physical protection, but protecting our spiritual creeper. And having no other desire than that, other than to try to chant for Krishna's pleasure, and accepting that which is favorable for the service of the name, and rejecting things which are unfavorable, which we find out, we can't speculate, we find out from Guru and Shastra. Not within our hearts so much, because that can be interpreted, that can be our own vision, our own desires sometimes come out in the form of so-called direction from Krishna. So it's always, even Lord Caitanya Mahaprabhu, when he was experiencing transcendental ecstasy after receiving initiation from Ishvara Puri, he couldn't stop chanting. He was dancing like a madman, chanting. He thought something had happened. People thought he'd gotten crazy, he had epilepsy, all sorts of different things they were thinking. He's been, haunted, there's some ghost in there or something. And he didn't know what to make of it all. And he even himself checked with Ishvara Puri, what is going on? I feel I'm going crazy. And sometimes we also read this Chaitanya Charitamrita, but Ishvara Puri said, no, this is symptom he's actually experiencing the highest form of love of God. He didn't just assume it. He checked it with his spiritual pure devotee of the Lord to qualify his emotions, etc., or his directions. Prabhupada goes on then describing the three stages of development in chanting: the offensive, the clearing, and the pure stage in chanting the holy name. So we're aiming for the pure stage. We don't want to remain in the mixed stage of devotional service. That's very rare also. So we would, Lord Caitanya has come to give us a chance to come to the highest platform of love of Godhead, not just some mixed platform, but the highest platform, through the performance of Sankirtan. Because this is just a summary here, so it doesn't go into detail on many points here. And it gives an outline. This is a form of yoga. It's mantra yoga, you could say. Maha Mantra Yoga, linking with Krishna through the Maha Mantra. And yoga is there to control our senses, fully engaging our senses. When we perform congregational chanting, it fully engages our senses. Most of us have probably experienced when we chant japa, the mind wanders like crazy all over the universe, whatever a universe is. The mind goes all over the place when we sit down, because it's, is natural. These things come, they've got to come up. These different desires come up. And if we keep chanting, it's just like this, the mist comes up in the morning. But as the sun rises, the mist is cleared away. So all the mist comes up because we've been so long associating with the material, with this so much baggage in our hearts, not just in terms of specifically desire for this, desire for that, but tendencies, attitudes, perspectives of the world, perspectives of ourselves, speculations. So many things come up, as well as the direct attachments for sense objects and so on. So many other things come up, and doubts, all sorts of things come up in the sky of our consciousness. But if we keep this as the sun rises, is all dissipated. So we just got to make sure we keep the rising sun on our agenda, so to speak, so that gradually all these foggy clouds in our consciousness are removed in the presence of the sun. Everything can be clear. The sun's characteristic is it can cleanse dirty places without becoming contaminated itself. So just have to stay in the presence of the Krishna sun. Krishna, Surya Sama, Maya Haya Andhakara. Krishna is like the sun, Maya is the dark. The darkness is removed. A simple example. Darkness is removed from our consciousness when we stay in the presence of the sun. Prabhupada describes as controlling the senses and mind, engaging them in Krishna consciousness so that we no more fill our consciousness, fill our minds with material desires. We may have a big load from previous association in this world. But if we stop doing that, it's like Prabhupada's example of a vessel which is full of dirty water. If you keep pouring milk into it, and after some time it becomes predominantly milk, and then eventually almost completely milk, maybe a tiny trace, almost imperceptible trace of dirty water, as it will be as long as one is slightly in touch with the material world, but almost imperceptible, almost completely to nil. All material things are cleared away. Final thing, the mercy of Krishna just takes the living entity out of the material world altogether. When our consciousness is, we're just constantly pouring milk into the cup, or engaging in devotional service constantly, and all the material attractions and so it will slowly be evaporated in our consciousness. That's the idea. Okay, fixing one's mind on Krishna, well, that's we've already discussed, really. By constantly engaging and talking about his transcendental activities. How much we're doing this is another thing. But this is the recommendation of Lord Caitanya, that one should constantly engage one's senses, one's mind on Krishna by talking about his transcendental activity, cleaning his temple, going to his temple, seeing the beautiful transcendental form of the Lord, nicely decorated, hearing his transcendental glories, tasting food offered to him, associating with his devotees, smelling the flowers and tulsi leaves offered to him, engaging in activities for the Lord's interests, etc. Not difficult, not difficult, easy things. You don't have to be a PhD to serve Krishna. You don't have to be, having a big material qualification to do any of these things. Anyone can do that. It doesn't matter where we are. You can do it anywhere practically. You can have a temple in your own home if there's not one nearby. It's natural. So this is a simple process of attaining this platform of being absorbed, always being in Krishna consciousness. We're going to jump on a little bit because I'm just covering a little secret. So the Prabhupada also emphasized the importance. If we want to give up our lower or material activity, we have to, as Krishna explains in Bhagavad Gita, Vishaiva Nivartatena Rahvasya Vasavajama Sopyasya Param Drishva. We have to have a higher taste path of developing, becoming free of a lower taste. It's not just restraining oneself from sense objects. It's not just about that, negative. It's a positive thing. Devotional service is positive. Other forms of yoga may also incorporate a certain aspect of that, but primarily they're negative. Restraining oneself, performing austerities, and controlling and so on. All part of yoga, no doubt. But the best form of yoga and the highest form of yoga is explained by Krishna in the Bhagavad Gita, in the 6th chapter of the Bhagavad Gita, Yogi Namapi Sarvisham Magatanantrakam Shvadavam Mujitayama Samayak Tatamo Mataha. The highest yogi is one who is constantly engaged in my loving devotional service, worshipping me with all his heart, full firm faith in him, worshipping him fully, 24 hours, is the highest of all. It's the topmost yoga because he's attained the perfection of yoga, which is to realize the Supreme and one's relationship with the Supreme. So this is engaging our senses, not difficult. One's already situated in ihayasya hridasya. One who's situated in this full devotional service, always, one is considered a liberated situation already considered. In a liberated Kishmantra Yoga Vichara, what Yogena Sevit, so Gurunam Samtitaitam, Brahma Bhuyaya Kapate. One is situated on the Brahman platform, one who is fully engaged in devotional service, unfailing, doesn't, it's not like, okay, I've done my 3 hours, now I'm going to do something else. What next? Okay, we'll go to a music festival or go to, whatever, a sports event, which you can go there to preach, but not to enjoy one's senses. The devotee is fully engaged. He's not partly engaged, fully engaged, unalloyed, unmotivated, uninterrupted. On that level, he's on the level of Brahman. He's already considered liberated, even if we may not see like that. We may not even, in one sense, be like that. We may still be sort of on a materialistic kind of level in one sense, but we're fully engaged in devotion. So on the boat of pure devotion, which is just, is one way, the destination back to God. We just have to stay on that boat. One has to engage his mind and senses in Krishna consciousness. Lord Chaitanya Maharaj is so easy teaching us how to do that by engaging in preaching the holy name, engaging chanting the holy names, hearing about the holy names together on our own sometimes, but all together just trying to be fully focused on this mission of Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. The word Vishvambara. Lord Chaitanya's name, Vishvambara, one who maintains the entire universe and leads all living entities. Nice description. Lord Chaitanya is the complete reservoir of all mercy and good fortune. Complete reservoir. There's no lack. It's not like a material. If you have £1,000 and I give you 500, I've only got 500 left. And if someone else comes along, takes the 500, I've got nothing left. I can't give anything. But Lord Chaitanya's mercy is unlimited. Unlimited. The more we desire sincerely, acting in a way appropriate according to that desire, Lord Chaitanya's mercy will be showered upon the devotee more and more. There's no limit. It's amazing. The spiritual activities actually begin after liberation, as we just heard. And we did hear the Prabhu, we Kalpate, one who comes to this spiritual platform, who no longer has any desire, Brahmabhuta Prasanatmana Shojatina Kamshti Samaksaveshu Putishu Madbhaktim Bhavate Param, one who's on this transcendental platform, has no more hankering, in other words, one who is fully engaged in devotional service, who has no more desire, no more hankering, no more lamenting, but once comes to the spiritual platform. On that level, pure devotional service begins when we come to that spiritual platform. So the teachings of Lord Caitanya specifically are to help us to come to that spiritual platform, not stay on our own platform of how we perceive it, how I like it, how I see it, and so on and so forth, how I feel it. It would be there in the beginning, but the process of devotional service is to free us, change our perception away from seeing it in terms of our mind and senses exactly, but seeing it in terms of our relationship with Krishna, genuine relationship. Such liberated activities in Krishna consciousness constitute the goal of human perfection. Well, it says everyone can join in this Sankirtan movement. No previous qualification is necessary. None. No matter what you are. Just by following his teachings, anyone can become a perfect human being. Just by following his teachings. So it's very good if we can, very valuable. We're going to be having Visheshika Prabhu is inaugurating a session between 3rd and 9th of September in the whole of ISKCON. This is requested by the ISKCON leaders. So we try to take advantage of that time. It could be any time, but around the world, especially now, the world situation, much confusion, much depression, much unsurety, suffering, and so on. Perhaps a little more than what we used to. Especially, this is very important that we really connect with the pure devotee, connect with Krishna, hear the Srimad Bhagavatam. So during these days, 3rd to the 9th, that'll be 7 days. This is a week which we're requesting or encouraging all the devotees to try to read more than usual, much as possible, Srila Prabhupada's books during that time. This will not only clarify our own intelligence and give us a taste of the sweet nectar which the pure devotees reciprocate by churning these topics, but it will also be very auspicious for the whole world. And then between the 17th, I think it's the 17th and the 23rd, we have the World Holy Name Festival. It used to be called World Holy Name Week. Now we've renamed it Festival, and that is for increasing. Maybe this year we won't be able to go so much on the street in some places, but wherever we are, online, in the home, wherever it is, more chanting of the holy names. Absorbing. What do the books tell us to do? What is the essence of Bhagavatam? What is the conclusion of Bhagavad Gita? Conclusion is to surrender, and that surrendering is to take shelter of the holy name so we can demonstrate that. We read the books to get that conviction, to remove the doubts in our hearts, that Krishna is the supreme, that our business is to serve him, and to understand and hear what is the means of service. Congregational chanting of the holy names of Krishna, and many other things, but it leads to congregational chanting. So this is an opportunity to be absorbed in congregational chanting. We'll be speaking more on that in weeks to come, and hopefully absorbing ourselves in it also. So this is the preface of Srila Prabhupada's first big book in the Western world. We already published the first 3 cantos of Bhagavatam. This was the next book which Srila Prabhupada published, Teachings of Lord Caitanya, so we can actually, by the mercy of Lord Caitanya Mahaprabhu, understand Srimad Bhagavatam and literally live the Srimad Bhagavatam by following the mood of Lord Caitanya. Prabhupada says it. Lord Chaitanya Charitamrita is the actual, manifestation, living manifestation of pure love of Godhead. What Srimad Bhagavatam is teaching in Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu's pastime is practically being demonstrated and lived by Chaitanya Mahaprabhu and his associates. Take advantage of this wonderful opportunity to hear and chant the message of Bhagavatam, the holy names. Hare Krishna. So I'm going to finish there for today and ask if anyone would like to ask any questions. You can put them on the chat site if you wish. Is the chat open? Do you know how to open the chat? Is it down here?
Yeah.
Do I just press this, isn't it?
Yeah.
Okay, we'll see. So if you have any questions or comments, please share them and we'll take it from there. I'm sure you're all eager for the opportunity to get out and share this Krishna consciousness with others more and more. What we normally term Sankirtan, but Sankirtan itself literally means congregational chanting. That can be done anywhere. It doesn't necessarily mean outside on the street or in a park or a hall or something. It could be anywhere. And we say Nagar Sankirtan generally means around the town, around the village, whatever. The Sankirtan or chanting the Harinam, we say we're going on Harinam. Yeah, it does. It means what it means. It doesn't necessarily mean we're going out somewhere. No, Harinam can be like we are now, sitting on your chair. We're going to have Harinam today. We should have it every day. And Prabhupada was here in New Mayapur in 1976. He asked us if the devotees were going out and we're performing Sankirtan. Someone said, we can only do it once a week, Prabhupada. I said, what? Once a week? Why only once a week? And they said, well, it's a long way to the town. And Prabhupada said, well, then that's what I mean. He said, Sankirtan means here. You should be doing Sankirtan here every day. It's not that we just have to think in terms of everywhere else. That's nice also, but it's a little mechanical. We should try to perform Sankirtan everywhere, anywhere. I don't see any questions so far. Way, there's one question here, way. Okay. From America, there's a wonderful Vaishnava in America. I don't know if that's, we'll have to see. Way, what is the best to teach children about Kirtan? What way is the best, I suppose? What way is the best way to teach children about Kirtan? Well, we have a mother here who has 2 children. She had a lot of experience. Well, what do you think? I mean, we could answer that in the sense of a simple answer. Best way to teach somebody about something? Well, it is, you can try to force it. That's not the best way. Modern society kind of makes it obligatory to learn certain things, and everyone around us is doing it. If you don't do it, you don't get a job at the end of the line, something like that. You don't get any money. It's kind of thing you have to do. And education is required, no doubt. So educating children about the chanting of the holy name, well, with love, but the best way is to teach by example, and to teach by love, not by force, but by love. If you make it very attractive, it's naturally likely to be more attractive. And by example, if the children see the parents, and they're not really taking it seriously, you can't expect the children to take it seriously. Or whoever, the teacher, whatever it is. They naturally, they pick up, it's not natural, there's nothing wrong with that, it's normal. They pick up on, you say this is the thing to do, you're not doing it. Or you're doing it, it doesn't seem to be doing you much good. Or you're doing it and you're not doing it very nicely. And so on and so forth. Do it until there's a show example. Practically, Lord Caitanya said, we have to teach by example. Religious principles are established by behavior, not just by dogmas and, forcing words and sometimes even threats and so on. So positive approach. Rather, we don't chant Hare Krishna. You are going to suffer in hell. That type of approach. And sometimes people may say things like that, but that's not very attractive. We had a question last night in our session here in Mayapur with our volunteers. There were about 15 or 20 volunteers with us at the moment. And one of them was born Muslim, practicing Muslim, but he's very broad-minded. He was also writing, discussing, inquiring. How can we go beyond the dogmas, which seem to always tend to be negative? You've got to do this. If you don't do this, you're going to get this and that. You're going to get all kinds of problems. If you don't do this, you're going to go to hell. On and on, different things are there, threats almost. How easy? Ask the question. How can we go to that to actually develop genuine love of God? How can we do it? It's a very nice point. Coming from someone who has a strong religious identification, you could say. A very broad-minded and serious question. But if we don't know who God is, it's pretty difficult to know. What are we going to say about that? We either have to hear who God is or associate with someone who knows who God is. It's very difficult to love somebody we don't know. Don't know anything about them practically. All we know is that if you don't surrender to them, you're going to be beaten, thrown into a hellish pot of boiling ghee or something. It's not very attractive. We have to hear about who is God. That's why the next book Prabhupada brought out, Krishna book, Nectar of Devotion. Who is God? So we have to lovingly, in a nice way, help their children to understand. Not just a mechanical Hare Krishna, Krishna. I mean, japa, of course, for them is just, what is it? I don't know what it is. Can't imagine they can take it very deeply. It's only very advanced souls can do that usually. But kirtan, they enjoy it, dancing and singing. Make it nice, make it attractive. Encourage them to play the instruments, even if they don't do it quite right in the beginning, but encourage them. Encourage them to lead the kirtan. Make it very attractive. And also, in a nice way, try to share Krishna's opulences, the positive aspects of Krishna. Not, well, if you don't do this, you're not going to get breakfast. If you don't do this, blah, 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 whatever it is. No, make it positive. Or to encouraging people to move forward. Not just telling them, oh, you're doing this wrong, you're doing that wrong. Very nice. And it's even more wonderful if we do it like this. So positive, be positive. Try to encourage them in a positive way. Nice association. Of course, if there can be nice association for the children, which includes nice Krishna conscious activities, different things. They love children. Generally, children love to show off. They love to show things. So if they can be engaged in leading a little kirtan, if they can be engaged in putting on a drama, if they can be engaged in different things, even when they grow a little older, in cooking things, whatever it may be. Little things, so they feel, yes, they feel like, oh, doing something, we're being appreciated, we're going, we're useful, it's good, it's fun. Krishna consciousness should be fun for the children, as much as possible. Hare Krishna, anything else? Here's another one. Please, Hare Krishna, this is from India. I still often function as a part-time devotee. Once I'm done with my rounds, I seek material enjoyment in music and movies, etc. I often feel like I'm not really making progress in reducing these material tendencies. How do we overcome all of this and stick to our spiritual activities without any reduced fervor? You could see this from a bigger picture of the entire society. You can see it from our own personal self. So looking at our own personal self, in the bigger picture, there is accommodation in a sense, or let's say regulation. There's guidelines for different persons at different stages of material, spiritual advancement, where, there will be, certain regulated involvement in various social or even recreational activities. Krishna says regulation in these areas, even recreation. So, and maybe they're in a bigger picture. And when we look in our own picture where we genuinely want to advance, we can look back to the time when Srila Prabhupada started this long, and how most of the devotees who came in the early days were, basically speaking, they didn't have the knowledge of even what it was to be a pure devotee. They were associated with Prabhupada. They were just chanting Hare Krishna, come along, Swamiji feeds us and talk something about Krishna, very nice. And not much more than that was going on in their lives, but gradually they came forward by being attracted to Prabhupada's presence and inquired how we could advance. What do we do? And Prabhupada introduced things like regulating principles, regulating program, reading and chanting scriptures, and so on and so forth, even an etiquette as well. Particular etiquettes were introduced. So what do we do even after some time? Bhaktisiddhanta Maharaj said that this is very much depending upon association, very much, our progress in spiritual life. And association isn't just personal association or physical association. It can be associated in so many other ways too. And it's also coupled with a genuine desire. If a genuine desire is there, then Krishna will help. And how to help. But we have to ask, if a person wants help, we go to the person who can give it. Generally speaking, if you want money, you don't go to a beggar on the street usually. Although we did have that occasion last week in tours. I don't know how much he gave. We were doing Naga Sankirtan Kirtan on the street in the local city about 2 weeks ago. And one beggar on the street, I don't know what motivated him exactly, except for the we have given him prashad and different things in the past. But he came with his pot of coins, small coins, big pot, I mean, maybe 2 pots, I don't know. And he started throwing them all on the floor in front of us, hundreds and thousands of coins everywhere. Must have been collecting them for years. So, but that we didn't ask him, he just came and gave. That's very rare that happens. Generally go to someone who's got it. So somebody who's got pure devotion. And we all experience that when we're in the association of someone who's genuine, someone who's more advanced in spiritual life. We want to move forward in our spiritual lives. We want to, maybe there's a bit of emulation, motivation there, but we want to, it's by association. And that association is ultimately a siksha, following their instructions. And amongst that, it would be, we should not do these things. Most things is what we should do. Occupy our times in positive things. That is easier in the association of devotees, no doubt. On one's own, it is difficult. So, and many of you are living alone or in a small family of 2 or whatever it is. And sometimes that's difficult. That's why Prabhupada wanted temples. And now we have internet and so many other means of keeping in contact with each other. And devotional service of various kinds, preaching Krishna consciousness. So coupled with prayer, so if we're very sincere, that prayer will be that you don't want. If you read in 11th canto, chapter 20, I don't remember the verse number, maybe it's 19, I'm not sure. There's a series of verses there which deal with this. When a devotee genuinely wants pure devotion service, but because they're weak, their heart is weak, they tend to fall into, materialistic kind of situations from time to time, whatever it may be. So you have to read 11th canto, chapter 20. I think, I may be wrong, maybe around about verse 19 or something. Read the whole chapter, you'll come to it. Very nice verses there, very nice purpose to encourage us not to become discouraged. It usually means we're not hearing enough from the pure devotees. Reading the Shastras helps to strengthen our intelligence. It means our intelligence is weak. There may be other reasons too. Of course, there may be offenses involved or whatever, but let's just take it a normal situation. The intelligence is weak, and the mind gets the better of us. If we're weak, it's not that we want to do it directly. That's not our motive. But it happens with a weak mind. Intelligence is weak. The mind takes control, and we go down that avenue of unfavorable avenue, say, material avenue. So when we hear the right scriptures, directions, it helps strengthen our intelligence. A little easier to not succumb to these desires, and on the other side, to engage our mind in other activities, higher activities. So we have to find something which, at least at this stage, we like to do and try to do it. I was talking to a devotee yesterday. I was asking, well, what do you really want to do? And out of the depths of their heart, they came out. It never kind of came out before. They revealed what they really felt they wanted to do, and they really love it. They said, when I'm doing that, I forget all other things, completely absorbed. And it's such a wonderful service. And it's so much needed service. They want to help translate Prabhupada's books, or any books from English into French. They said that their whole life is like completely changed when they do this. So like that, you've got something which you really want to do, not just only the regulated devotional practices, but something positive, which our intelligence is very, very keen on applying itself to. And that will vary from person to person. Next one. How do we realize it? This is from India. How do we realize or feel we are depending on the mercy of the Lord? How do we realize it? How do we feel it? It's a good question. And I don't really think about that very often. How do we realize or feel we're depending? We can do it You can do it from a philosophical point of view quite easily, of course. We can do it by experience. We had experiences in our lives which remind us of it. There are so many different ways. We see it in our interactions with others in many occasions. That the Lord's mercy and depending on the Lord, let's say, are experienced in that way. We don't necessarily have to go out of our way to create situations without there. Meditating. One thing is for sure, as I can say, is that when we chant the holy name of Krishna, and we're sincerely trying to hear the name, all of these various, let's say, aspects of surrender come up in our hearts. This humbleness and meekness, this feeling of being almost helpless, totally dependent, like a child dependent upon its parent. All these various deep down feelings will come into the heart. And it's not just the theoretical imposition, it's something which is natural in the clearing stage of devotional service, is to it. But as long as we're chanting in Namaparad, offensive chanting of the holy names, in that particular situation, we will not be able to actually say, feel this. Practically speaking, Krishna can do anything, but from our point of view, we won't feel it. When our chanting comes at least to the clearing stage, we're making a conscious endeavor to avoid the offensive chanting of Krishna and serving the Vaishnavas. Krishna bestows his mercy on the one he achieved, on everybody, but specifically in this regard, so we have realization of how his mercy is working. When we serve the holy name, when we serve the Vaishnavas, the service to the Vaishnavas is also very important for the Lord to help to reveal this to us. The revelation is not just a philosophical or logistic imposition on our minds, so to speak. We can remind ourselves of this. That's also good. We remind ourselves of many things. But to actually realize it is something which comes from within our hearts. So the difficulties that we're going through in life, the challenges that we go through in life, the doubts that come our way, all have their part to play, and ultimately in coming to this platform of realizing the mercy of Krishna in everything. Feeling the mercy within our hearts, always, no matter what happens in our lives. Always to try to see it in that particular way. As you, the pure devotee thinks every situation is Krishna's mercy, is quite similar. Either good or bad, it's nice, but when I face problems, negative things, tests in life, so many times it's hard to see the Lord's hand, although I try to see it, the Lord's plan. Many times it's hard to digest and difficult to adjust. It has resulted in wasted my lot of time struggling mentally, which could have been more effectively utilized in service. Can you give some guidance in this regards? Well, we touched on it. The previous question was also related, I would say, to this. And we see one thing is, Srila Prabhupada, for instance, we just celebrated his appearance day maybe a few days ago. And we see his life. Why do the pure devotees seem to also go through a lot of struggle? Sometimes it seems, I mean, I can tell you frankly, Prabhupada kept a diary when he was in America when he first came. You may not have read it. It's not the Jaladuta diary. It's called The Beginning. It didn't come to light until many, many years after Srila Prabhupada left us. So you won't find the references in the Lilamrita for this. It came out after Lilamrita was completed. Maybe it needs to be adjusted somewhat to incorporate Prabhupada's diary, which one devotee had been keeping. Devotee, for some reason, acquired it in Second Avenue and nobody else had it. And then later on, it's Prabhupada's handwriting, his own personal diary of the struggles he was going through. Many times he was literally indicating, there's no point staying here. I want to go back. Please give me the fare so I can go back to India, and different things. It was often like, it was very interesting, to say the least. Asking Sally Agarwal, can you please give me the money? I want to leave to San Francisco now. There's nothing's happening in New York, so on and so forth. Or if that doesn't work, I want to go back to India. If you can, come and help me with open a restaurant, all sorts of things. Prabhupada was, what to do. What to do? If you do, of course, you would always see it as Krishna's mercy. We may not. But the pure devotees teach us. They teach us by their life how to see things in relationship with Krishna. You can quote this and you can quote that, no doubt. But a personal example of the pure devotees is so. How many times do the pure devotees go through these difficulties? And by just hearing about that, it gives us strength. Hearing about the ordeal that Haridas Thakur went through gives us strength. Hearing about even Jesus Christ. In other religions also we see the same thing. It gives us strength. It gives us conviction. When we hear about these pure devotees and their lives, well, to speak of Srila Prabhupada, his business, failures, his family challenges, his own godbrothers discouraging him, the struggle he had to fulfill his spiritual master instructions in Delhi and Vrindavan, Jhansi, everything was closed down unexpectedly there, and so many heart attacks on board the boat, the struggle in the first year, the struggle even throughout his efforts to present Krishna consciousness were there. Of course, for a pure devotee, it's a relish. The devotee sees, as Bhaktivinoda Thakur says. Again, by hearing these things, it can give us strength if we're a little sincere. It gives us strength. Bhaktivinoda Thakur said, in all difficulties, this is, the struggles and the difficulties I face, I feel great happiness. Krishna wants, this is his mercy upon me. The most important verse Prabhupada said for all devotees, not say the most important, but the guide for all devotees. You're asking for guidance. Okay, read the 10th canto, chapter 14, text 8 of the Bhagavatam, Prayers of Lord Brahma, and read the purport, and read the Nectar of Devotion. Prabhupada's comments, page 91, on that particular verse. Guidance is there. The pure devotees give us guidance by their example. They go through these difficulties to show us how we can solve, how we can gain the strength not to be disturbed. In material world, there are difficulties in this world. We can't avoid it. It's the constitution of the material world, you can say. Ups and downs. So how to become Krishna conscious and not depending on the ups and disturbed by the downs. But to be always Krishna conscious is up and down, heaven or hell, black or white. All Bhagavad Gita is directed towards this, not being affected by the dualities and being focused on Krishna. So the pure devotees teach us how to do that. That's the process of devotional service. And going through these difficulties which you may be going through is not, don't think this is to strengthen our devotion. This is to help us to actually take shelter of Krishna, because there's no other shelter. How else are we going to deal with it? And then we say, but I've still got difficulties. But you've achieved the purpose. You're taking shelter of Krishna. We're not here to get rid of difficulties. We're here to take shelter of Krishna. Pure devotees like Queen Kunti, let these difficulties happen again and again. We may not be on that level, but that's one of our prayers. Because then I have no choice but to remember you and take shelter of you. I can't get any other solace. Chant Hare Krishna. This is the proof of their sincerity. Oh, we give up, or whatever. It's easy to do that. And of course, whatever progress is made is great and it's glorious. But we can be even more great and glorious if we just take shelter of Krishna. If you read that verse 10, 14, 8, you may get a little bit more of an understanding of this. Bhagavatam 10, 14, 8. Beautiful prayers of Lord Brahma. And read the purport. That's most important. Don't just read the verse. Otherwise we'll have our own conditional understanding of what it means. We have to read the purport of the pure devotees of the Lord. Then we can understand it in its real sense. And that's it, I think. That's the last question. Looks like it. Hare Krishna. And pray. Pray, pray, pray. Endeavor and pray, they would say. On our own, we cannot overcome. This material world energy is very strong. And if we surrender to Krishna means prayer also, and chanting. Okay, so thank you all very much. Kirtan, wonderful. Thank you all so much for the wonderful association. Questions which we can all think on, meditate on, how we can all, we're all facing the same thing. Dear Prabhu asked the last question. We're all basically in the same boat. I don't think it's just you, because we're coming out of a dark place, and it's natural, it's a little difficult to see at first. We still have some anchors in the dark place. Sometimes it's difficult to function, let go, not to be affected by it all, etc. Again, association, as much as we can. Learn how. Everything's about attitude, Prabhupada writes. It all depends on attitude. So Krishna's trying to change your attitude. And you'll see at certain stages that all these difficulties, not really difficult at all. They're just opportunities. Opportunities to surrender. In the beginning, it doesn't always seem like that. It seems opportunities to not surrender. More advanced devotees see some opportunities to. Another opportunity is to surrender to Krishna, because I can't handle it on my own. I don't know what to say. Only if we surrender to Krishna. You see, all the answers are there in the books, in Bhagavatam. Everything's there. You just have to take it, Prabhupada said. My mercy is there, you just have to take it. That mercy comes in the form, especially in the form of Srila Prabhupada's books, the process of devotional service. Just take it. Okay, Hari Bol. I'm going under the water here, sinking down the screen. Hare Krishna, thank you all very much. And do stay with us if you wish for a wee bit more kirtan. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna,
Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare,
Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama. So you can see Rama Rama. Come over the back of me. Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Hare Halakar, Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Hare Hare Bo, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna,
Krishna Krishna Hare 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 Rama Hare Rama 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 Hare 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 Krishna Hare Krishna Krishna Hare 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 Rama Hare Rama Rama Hare 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 Krishna Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama Hare Rama 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 Hare 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 Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama Hare Rama 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 Hare 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 Krishna Krishna Hare Rama Hare Rama 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 Hare Krishna Hare Krishna Krishna Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare 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 Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama Hare Rama 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 Hare 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 Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare 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 Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare 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 Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare 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 Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare 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 Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare 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 Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare Krishna Krishna Hare 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 Rama Rama Hare 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 Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama Hare Rama Rama Hare Hare Krishna Krishna Hare 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 Rama Hare Hare Krishna 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 Hare Hare Rama Hare
Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Srila Prabhupada ki jai. Gaur Premanandi Harinama Sankirtanam ki jai. All glorious to the assembled devotees. All glorious to Sri Guru and Sri Gauranga. All glorious to Srila Prabhupada. Namo Vishnu Padaya Krishna Vishtaya Bhute Srimate Bhakti Vedanta Swami Tinam Namaste Saraswate Gaurani Pacharine Nirvasesha Samyavari Astacharya Shatani. Haribo everyone!
Haribo!
Let's hear you all. Haribo!
Haribo!
Can't hear anything.
Hare Krishna.
Haribo!
Haribo.
Haribo!
Haribo.
Jai Haribo! Srila Prabhupada ki
Haribo.
jai! Hari Haribo! Please read Prabhupada's book. All your doubts can be removed. Jai Gauranga Mahaprabhu Ke Jai. Janananda Prabhu Ke Jai. Haribo. Haribo.